brother, they used to do. I used to do shows at the church, at the church for the kids on the weekend and whatnot. So it was like, you know, he was like one day, it was like, yo, I got a couple guys, I know they can rhyme and everything else. Can you put them down? I was like, why not? You see, I never had no MCs. I was always a freelance DJ. I never had no MCs. I was always freelance. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Bring them in. I don't care. You know, so we all kind of got together and it was like, wow, these cats is kind of good. You know, I like them. They nice and whatnot. So it was like, you know, after the show and everything, it's like, yo, come by the crib, you know, let's see what we're going to do and whatnot. So we kind of all infiltrated together and whatnot. Because my crew I had a crew called, named Devastating Force. But the joke was I was the only person in the crew, so. So I was the Devastating Force.
That's the Devastating Force.
Okay, I was the Devastating Force and whatnot.
To reckon with it.
Okay, and so like the original name at one time it was Devastating Force and the Freeze MCs. Freeze MCs was Max Mello C and LL Cool J, Clarence Lindsay, and James Todd Smith and whatnot. We came down here, we made a few tapes together and whatnot, and then I don't know what actually happened. Max Mello C kind of wandered out the picture. Don't know why though. He wandered out the picture, so it was just like me and Todd. So me and Todd was like, you know, we was down here banging out beats and this, that, and the other. The funny thing about it is like every time, you know, we practiced, which was, I don't know if you call it practice or not, because it was like I would take like, you know, basic break beat, big beat, and something like that. And I would sit there and rock that, and he'd sit down and he'd write stuff. Okay? We practiced that. He come back 2-3 days later, and I throw him big beat, and I'm thinking routine. He done wrote something else. Okay. So it was like, you know, man, weren't you supposed to say something right here? So I after a while, I just learned to like just roll with it. It was like, all right, yo, you know, I'll keep the beats, you keep rocking.
That was you adapting to his creative process, or you just didn't really give a care?
Nobody adapted to anything. We were just doing what we did. You know what I'm saying? It was like, you know, I don't want to say it was ego clashing because it was no egos, but it was like, you do what you do, right. I do what I do. Right. Okay, now I'll keep the beats going for you, and I'll keep them on beat, so you don't have to worry about that part. You do what you do. So it was like, you know, we kind of ran that way with it. And, you know, like I said, back then, also at the same time, like, you know, during block parties and all stuff like that, it was like, you know, when you get out there in the street, you just did what you did. You know, you just did your thing. So it wasn't, you know.
Queens was known for block parties. I mean,
we rocked them.
I mean, that's one thing I could guarantee anybody for. From the time I came here in 75 to even nowadays, we have some of the most elaborate block parties. I know Harlem is known for block parties and Brooklyn.
And Brooklyn, yeah. Brooklyn
but yo,
bangers.
Bro, ain't nothing but a party but Queen's party, unless you probably go to a Diddy party, but we don't want to get into that. That's another topic, and I don't want to talk about that.
Yo, for real. So, yeah, we like I said, we rocked our parties and whatnot. You know, we got out there, block parties, did joints in the park and everything else, and it was like, you know, yo, let me get on the mic. Put them on, and you know, you just run from there. You know, you just like, psh. So that's basically, you know, that was that. That's how we used to run it. You know.
My last question for you before we go.
Let me switch. Let me switch a bit.
That camera's recording?
Yeah, it's recording. I kept checking though. The screen.
It shuts off.
Yeah, but it's, I don't know. Yeah, it's still recording. Don't worry. All those will be cut.
My biggest question for you before we wrap this up, because I think it's like very, very important. It's been on my mind since like 1992 till now, because I know Gangster Rap came in and like basically changed everything. Even though we had Cool G Rap and Ice-T, and they were like real gangster rappers that we had. They didn't.
We also had KRS-One, but that's on the quiet tip though.
He wasn't gangster. He was. I mean, he had his gangster, which I call that his persona, but he was on a more.
He was on an educational
level, and he still is to this very day.
Yeah.
But my big question to you, being the change in the music from gangster to now, do you really think, how would I say, did gangster music like really influence the music that we have today? That's my question to you, because I've asked quite a few people and all of them gave me different answers.
Did it influence? Yes and no, because now rap music is because of the technology and everything else. You're going in different directions with it and whatnot. Where like today, you know, you set up everything on a home computer or your phone,
Right.
and you can do everything right here in the house and everything. It's like, wow, okay, cool, and it's not so much that it influenced it, but to a certain degree, yeah, it did, because now everybody think they can rap, and you know,
Yeah.
you got the mumble rappers. Okay,
That's not good. I don't like it.
Exactly. Okay, you got the mumble rappers. Then you got cats that even though like even back when NWA was doing it one night, the studio gangsters.
Right.
Okay, now everybody's in their basement is a studio gangster.
Right.
Okay, but the bad thing is if they're not studio gangsters, okay, they're sending out the wrong message. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like I got a beef with you, so I quickly get on Instagram. Yo, check this out, man. Yo, pull up. If you all of that, pull up, yeah. Okay, pull up back in the day, it took about 6 months. Okay? 6 months. You know what I'm
we
saying?
didn't have the grand back then.
Oh, okay, for real. I mean, good prime example. LL and Kumo D.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, exactly. Let me drop a song. Okay? By the time you heard it, or LL heard it on the radio, it was like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay, it's like that now. Yeah, you know. But then time had passed. You know, it's like a couple of weeks, maybe a few days, whatever, and whatnot. A little time to pass. But it was like, okay, yeah, I got you. All right. So, you know, they started writing. And then when the studio started dropping the songs, it was like, they didn't drop a song every week.
No, they didn't.
Okay, they dropped it over, you know.
Months apart.
Yeah, months apart. So it was like, it kind of kept the beat going. And at the same time, it was like, oh, here's the answer one. Yeah, I got you. It was like, and everybody was still, you know, on opposite sides. Now, like I said, you pull up Instagram, pull up. I'm right here on your block. In fact, I'm in front of your house, man. And it's like, yo, okay. And these young boys don't stop and think.
No, they don't.
Okay.
Very irrational.
Yeah. Okay. They quick fast into, oh, niggas in front of my crib, yo, and then come out the door blasting, and it's like, okay, but that's not what battling was all about.
Never was.
Okay, because then you stop and look at it this way. If Busy B had got pissed off at Kumo D,
Right. He went at it with words.
yeah, but I'm saying if Busy B had got pissed off at Mo D back in the day, right, and took today's mentality, we'd still be in the streets. Okay, we would not be a multi-bazillion-dollar corporation or nothing. You know what I'm saying? Because it'd have been like, oh, okay, you talked about him. He talked about, okay, he pulled out his gun, he shot him. Okay, cool. Check this out. We gonna start stopping these parties in the whole line, and hip hop never would have been able to grow. So,
But hip hop grew not because we had the talent, but the white guys and them capitalized off us because we had the money. And that's what basically I would say how hip hop got this far.
oh
I mean, it would have progressed eventually, but it got that far. You had the original Sugar Sylvia, what's her name?
Sylvia Robinson.
Sylvia
Yeah.
Robinson. I still have that 5-disc CD in my room where I have all the original Grandmaster Flash, Furious 5, Apache, everything that you could ever name.
Somewhere in there.
And
Trust me.
that right there is like one of the most famous rap empire before it came to mainstream hip hop.
Oh yeah. That definitely was. You know,
That was before Rick Rubin. That was before Def Jam.
There's also a lot of backstory behind Sylvia and whatnot. You know, you find out over the years and whatnot that she was straight up old school.
Right.
You know, she was straight up old school mafia style.
Oh,
And
really?
whatnot. Yeah.
It's a black family-owned business, right?
Yeah, but there was a couple of Italian guys that had some money invested also and whatnot. So
Oh.
I was like, you know.
That's something we just found out, everybody. Remember that.
Okay. There's a couple artists that I, over the years I've spoken to. Raheem from the Furious Five. We ain't getting no details, but Raheem from the Furious Five, has dropped a couple of, jewels to me. Where it was like, yeah, and this was done, and that was done, and certain things was done and whatnot. Because if you stop and think about it, during that timeline also, if you notice all the groups that came in, she started separating everybody and whatnot. She put Mel over the Furious Five.
Right.
She put Mo D over the Treacherous Three. Okay, the Funky Four at one time used to be, 4 of them and whatnot.
But then you made it Funky 4 plus 1 more.
Yeah, but then she split them because she dropped KK Rockwell and Rodney C. So then it was now the Funky Four, but it was just like, 2 MCs and
And the DJ.
yeah, type stuff. And it was like,
Oh.
yeah.
That's something for the history books, people. We're not finding that out too.
There's a lot of shade behind Sugar Hill. A lot of shade.
See, like you just said, shade, there's just heavy shade going on in the music industry. So if you think it's new, it's old. It goes back to the founding days.
Yeah, it goes back. The music industry has never been really a friendly industry, but, if you make it, you make it. If you don't, okay.
Do you say you'd have to sell, like they say, sell your soul to make it big in this industry, or it depends on all raw talent?
Half and half.
Half and half.
Half and half. Because remember, we ain't gonna touch on that subject too much, but Bad Boy's another prime example. Okay,
Right.
once you get at a certain level
Right.
in the industry where you own and control, okay, that's what you start doing to your artist. You start owning and controlling your artist and whatnot. Okay, because I can give you a couple of Bad Boy stories and whatnot, but the Bad Boy stories. Nothing's ever been proven and whatnot, but it's like, if you kind of connect the dots, you sit there and go, wow. That's what,
So
okay.
this is why you see where this led up to at this point, or where this is going, or how it ended up to at this point in time.
Yeah, something like that, it's just, there's a whole lot to
You were
learn.
still in the industry when Bad Boy came out?
Nah,
Or you just know?
Yeah, I just know. You make a couple of phone calls, you know a few people, things. You have a conversation.
All I remember about, because I know a few people, and my whole thing is before I left college, I remember the Finesse and Sequest song came out, their whole album.
Yeah.
And I knew one of the young ladies and her cousin. And when her cousin told me about the same guy we mentioned about with Bad Boy owner, I knew that before '94 about his personal. I told people that people was like, "Yo, that's not him. He down to the lady." I was like, "Yo, bro, y'all don't know. I had a run-in with dude. I don't want to talk about it. Only few people know. It's not pleasant. Look what came and happened."
And it did take like a bunch of years, but it's like it's really like the same old story.
Same old story.
Same old story. Just different characters. Because it's just like I said, going back to Sugar Hill. Okay, cheating your artist is always your first go-to.
To cheat your artist?
Cheat your artist, yeah.
How do you cheat your artist?
Dude, you know how long you make one record, okay? And this record, don't worry about the record. This record, right? You have sold 150,000 copies and whatnot.
Right.
Okay, now that's no problem. But now I forgot to tell you, okay, when you sign that contract, on each song that you make, okay, you get maybe about 3 cents off every single. So even if I sell a single for, let's say at that time, $5.99,
Right.
okay, you still only making 3 cents off of that. Okay, see, there's a whole lot of TLC, prime example. There's a whole lot of back math they don't tell you about. Okay, it's a whole lot of back math, and this is like for any and most record labels and whatnot. It was like, I forgot to tell you. Remember that video we made yesterday, right? Where we had the like giant, SSC jet plane and all this, that, and the other. That cost you. It didn't cost us. It cost you. Okay? So that's coming out of your money, right? Then remember when we went over the side of the Niagara Falls and we blew stuff up and, you know, the tanks and all? That came out of your, you know, that came out of your budget and whatnot. So after we sit there and finish all of that, by the time you do get finished, you know, I hand you a check for like, you know,
$5,000.
something like that, you know, 5, maybe 5, you know.
So the best thing you can say in this industry is to own your own shit.
Basically, yeah. Own your own, especially your masters. Own your masters. Okay? That's lesson number 1, because that's the one thing you never teach us. Own your masters. Okay?
How do you go about owning your masters? You self-publish? What? I mean...
There's a lot in it, man. There's a lot behind it. Publishing is another thing and whatnot. Okay? You know what pissed off? Going back to Sugar Hill. You know what pissed off Silly Robinson? I don't know if you remember, but Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, at that time he just did the message and everything. Right?
Oh, yes, I remember the message.
Okay. They were on Soul Train one time, right? And Rick James was also on Soul Train. Okay? Now, Rick James, we all know Rick James. You know, Rick James, bitch. Alright? We all know Rick James. Alright? Rick wanted to do a song with them. Okay? But he ended up doing it one night. Rick wanted to do a song with them. Rick was talking business to him. Okay, you get your people to call my people, right? And we can sit down, we can write. You and me can sit here, we can write a song in the whole line. But you work for a different label. I'm on a different label. Now, okay, I want to make sure that this song that I'm doing with you, that you get the correct percentage of money that you're due.
Right.
Okay? Royalties. Royalties?
What's royalties?
Boom. Okay. Okay, points.
What's points?
What's points? Wow. Okay, so Rick is sitting there explaining the whole thing. There's a whole lot behind it.
So all of these things like royalties and points is how the artist gets paid.
That's how they
for
get
a
paid.
period of time.
Yeah. Okay, but